My guest today is Sam Cooper, investigative journalist and publisher of The Bureau. We discuss recent revelations around an alleged CCP bribery and blackmail operation in Markham, Ontario, videotapes seized from a 53-room mansion that functioned as an underground casino, what may have been on those tapes, and the prominent Canadian politicians allegedly tied to this criminal network. Once again, Sam illuminates a story that has far-reaching implications as it relates to foreign political interference and has the potential to turn our political structures upside down. Stay tuned. Sam Cooper, again, another one. We're back. We just spoke like 3 days ago. People are seeing this 2 weeks from now, but it's like, I talk to you more than I talk to my wife, man.
Don't let her hear that, man. Things are popping, and I plan to keep them popping. So let's keep the rhythm going.
Well, I love your 90s hip hop slang reference. That's fantastic. That's the era I'm from. I know you're from the era too. I see some of your posts. I'm like, oh shit, that's a deep dive. Good one, Sam.
Yeah, I love that tune. Yeah. I'm not strapped, but there's people around me. If I need to call them, they'll be there.
So speaking of being strapped, you broke a giant story this week, a massive story. And, unfortunately in our era, with Jeffrey Epstein and the salacious stories that are still arriving through that story, there are certain key subjects that grab people's attention. And unfortunately, election interference, as amazing and horrific as a story like that is, doesn't quite grab people as much as, say, something like sexual blackmail, right? And so this story, as soon as I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be huge. So Sam, can you tell us what the story is and break it down for us?
Yeah, the story, I mean, to roll with how you set this up. Yeah, a lot of people have been following the election interference story, but they've only got proverbially, the tip of the iceberg is yes, China is by far the greatest threat. Yes, they're trying to influence our politicians. Yes, of course, they're trying to take our technology, but they're trying to, be puppet masters of our legislature. So a lot of people, felt, yeah, that's a pretty interesting, serious story. Maybe we better pay attention. But all along, and I'm not sure if I've told you before, I'm holding inside kind of a deeper awareness and a very troubling awareness that the actual levers of how our politicians are, could be illicitly financed get a lot darker. And so the core of this story is that China uses something internationally. We talked about the South Pacific before, how they can, in a weaker government, they can pretty much openly buy the government, and they can have, sketchy business persons buying a whole parliament. It's a little bit more tricky in Western nations like Canada. So to jump to the chase, I'm saying underneath the election interference story of China trying to influence our politicians, they are actually trying to own our politicians and have them by the scruff of the neck through what people would commonly associate with Russian intelligence, which would be relationship compromat. So compromat could be you're doing sketchy financial deals with a person, you're leveraging their greed, getting them to take bribes or getting them into, side deals in another country. Or it could be, the oldest profession, as you know, is called prostitution. And so it could be a sexual compromat. And so the core of the story that I revealed is, as I was being informed about election interference, my sources indicated a very key story was there are allegedly illegal casinos in Vancouver and Toronto that are run, of course, by Chinese mafia, as people that read my book know very well. But they are also clandestinely involving Chinese security forces. And as you know, all along, we've been talking about how my research is showing that we have, triads worldwide being, if not probably the most important global criminal and money laundering networks. China is deeply involved, their security services, with these underground, let's just call them financial arms. And so the story is in Markham, there's a 53-room mansion, incredible wealth. People in Canada followed the story that there was a casino bust, an alleged underground Chinese mafia casino. But there was more to the story. My sources said that Chinese intelligence was using this facility allegedly to corrupt or attempt to corrupt Canadian politicians who were very prominent visitors underground to this wealth club or VIP club or, underground casino. And so, we could talk about it for 10 episodes, but in a nutshell, the public interest here is that York Regional Police, in their criminal investigation, they capture cameras from inside the casino. They look at it and they get the idea that this is not just normal crime. This is, they fear Chinese foreign interference operations. And so they go to CSIS, according to my sources, say, we have something, we think you need to look at it. And in a nutshell, CSIS came to believe that the concern was Canadian politicians could be captured in compromising relations on camera. This casino was allegedly a brothel, and this could lead to blackmail. And so CSIS tries to get those tapes. They have to apply with a warrant. There's all kinds of interesting stuff in the warrant, which we'll talk about. But the case falls apart. And, I don't know where to go without speaking a whole book in my first answer, but that's it. CSIS fears Canadian politicians are being handled and corrupted by Chinese organized crime who's being used by Chinese Communist Party agents.
That's a mouthful, man. And I think it's something that we always suspected was happening, right? Because how do the Chinese gain as much control as it appears they have over us politically, right? And there's really only one way, and it has to be blackmail. At some point in time, if you're a politician and the public, Sam Cooper, is figuring out what you're up to, right? The only reason you keep going is because they have something on you, right? It's the only logical explanation, right?
That's a huge lever. I mean, some people can still claim that they would like to, believe in a world of, as my hedge fund friend says, kittens and rainbows. A lot of Canadians would like to believe that China isn't as bad as people down in Washington or Canberra know, and they still want to believe that we can trade with this country, and so yeah, there's politicians out there that maybe they haven't been corrupted or blackmailed, and maybe they still believe it's in Canada's best interest to have great let's keep working on this relationship instead of being like an abused domestic partner. They're going to change. No, they're not. And so yeah, I think it's reasonable for people that say we always felt it suspicious why Canada wouldn't very quickly say Huawei 5G is a bad idea. Why are there so many politicians arguing for it? And yeah, I do think whether it's business relationships that are hidden, whether it's sexual compromise, blackmail, families under threat, these kind of levers are what thug states use. And China is a thug police state. They use those tactics on their own population. They use those tactics on diaspora populations. And I'm saying that my sources say they use it on Canadian politicians. And to your point, for anyone that's questioning, is it really realistic that China has compromising videos of politicians? Ask yourself, CSIS openly says any politician or business person that goes over there, we tell them, okay, be a little bit careful when you're out being entertained at one of these luxurious dinners or karaoke or something. You may be approached by a young female or vice versa, that doesn't just have your attractive demeanor in mind, right? And so here what we have is it looks like China has gone beyond trying to corrupt visiting business persons or politicians. As my sources might say, they have forward operating hubs in Canadian cities where, let's just call them gray area business persons, are tasked, encouraged to entertain Canadian politicians and advance those relationships into corrupt areas.
Yeah. And so, okay. So I spoke to Nick Bryant on this podcast a few months ago, and Nick is probably he's much like you, but the expert in terms of Jeffrey Epstein and sexual blackmail, right? And he kind of broke it down for me in the simplest terms. And what it appears is that Jeffrey Epstein was positioned by somebody or some groups, right? And there's this idea that Epstein was working on behalf of the Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence. But he told me that there is absolutely no way the CIA would allow the Mossad to operate within the United States unless the CIA was involved. So what we're looking at is kind of an operation that's ran by multi intelligence task force, right? Intelligence from different countries working together through Epstein to gain leverage and blackmail over politicians, both foreign and domestic. Now, this sounds a lot to me like a very similar scenario. Can we talk about how the York police captured the video footage?
Yeah, as much as I can. I mean, I understand that this is, in July 2020, as I write, it's just a normal, not normal, it's a Sinaloa state level kind of police force, activity. Canadians, as I say, would be stunned to see the level of armature that our force, they're wearing face masks in some cases so they won't be exposed, body armor. I believe, dozens of officers raid this palace, what they literally call, a palace of corruption. And in the course of the search of the mansion, of course, they're going through, the casino chips, the AR-15, the Desert Eagle 50 caliber, all these brutal weapons, the Motai liquor, 1.5 million worth. And then they get to areas where they start to see pictures of politicians. They get to areas, I'm told, where they find real estate documents. And so this starts to fit, the patterns of why are all these politicians here? This person's a real estate developer. Why pictures of politicians in the areas where this person or consortium or, pro-Beijing business persons want to develop in Toronto? And so the search advances, and they seized video evidence. And at a certain point, people with knowledge that extends beyond just criminal or underground gambling matters look at the footage. And I've not reviewed the footage. I've not heard in detail what it contains. But what I've confirmed from intelligence sources, law enforcement sources, and people in the diaspora that would suspect same things is that what was revealed on the tapes raised the concern that Canadian politicians, who I can't name, but I'm told and believe are involved in the Toronto election interference network that's tied to the Chinese consulate, could be captured in ways that would give leverage to Chinese Communist Party agents. And so York Regional Police don't have the mandate or the laws to investigate that kind of concern. It's a national security concern. They believe they contact CSIS in Toronto and say, we think you should look at this. And CSIS has to file a warrant because they can't just take that material. There's like let's just call it not a Chinese wall. I won't use that pun. There's a wall between Canadian police and CSIS.
Right.
They're not supposed to share certain things. And so CSIS applies for a warrant. And the twist here is that this major publicized, probably unprecedented visuals of an underground casino mansion operating in Canada at a scale that blew everyone's mind. The case falls apart, about 6 months later or more, because allegedly, about $450,000 worth of luxury watches from the main suspect vanished during a search. And so the point here is that CSIS has heard from Australia's Security and Intelligence Agency on a different type of thing. They've been told, hey, Canada, you should pay attention. In Australia, Chinese intelligence is using transnational organized crime connected real estate developer tycoons to donate massively to political parties to try to, in a corruption type operation. Five Eyes, that's Canada, United States, etc., should be aware of this pattern. So CSIS has this knowledge from Australia. York Regional Police is now telling them something similar appears to be happening in Markham, Ontario, and they try to get this. The case just vanishes. It falls apart. And so they can't even get, it's like reaching for, something and it just vanishes. Something important. I was told this could have been a breakthrough case for Canada. If we could have seen what was on those tapes, it might have added something very important, to these other stories I've been reporting about. And they couldn't get it. That evidence is gone. Criminal charges against the main guy were withdrawn, fell apart. That's a Crown prosecutor decision. I don't want to leave our viewers and listeners the idea that there wasn't an illegal casino there. York Regional Police have never walked away from those allegations. The videotape speaks for itself, and the guy had to forfeit just short of $1 million in cash and weapons found in the mansion. But also there was a guy from Beijing who was charged for weapons that was said to be an integral part of this underground mafia casino operation. I should add right here, I've reached out to the lawyer representing the primary suspect. I haven't heard back. So, to end this part of the answer, it's almost a major breakthrough for Canadian intelligence. If it leads to something, then finally Canadians will know for a fact that, China uses organized crime, but the case just disappears. But what I reported on goes a much farther into digging into fundraising networks and a United Front Work Department friendship association that was in the CSIS warrant, according to my sources. And that becomes very important to understanding what look to be mostly federal Liberal Party fundraising networks, going right up to Mr. Trudeau.
I wouldn't sit by your phone waiting for a callback from that fella. Just a heads up. But,
I've got to call and I've got to ask. So the offer is out there.
So I want to circle back to the beginning of the story, and for people listening, we're going to break this whole thing down. We're going to get into how the case falls apart, but I think the setup is really, really important. So, why do the York Regional Police end up inside of this palace? And the reason I ask is because it seems like this is a very politically sensitive location, right? It seems like there's a lot happening there, and that people within the York Regional Police may know that, maybe this place is off limits or turn a blind eye. So how do they end up there?
Well, it's just it starts as other than the fact that people should not be able to believe that there's a 53-room mansion operating as an illegal casino in Canada, and that our politicians are inside. Everyone should never stop being shocked about that. But the case itself is just standard good boot leather police work. There's a major alleged, organized crime type operation going on in Markham, Ontario. York Regional Police know very well that international organized crime, specifically China, but not just China, Italy too, Russia's in the mix, is for some reason, very, 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 very deeply invested in the Greater Toronto area and these quiet, affluent suburbs north of it, like Markham. And so they say, hey, okay, we're getting whatever it is, human sources, wiretaps, anything. They don't even have to have that. You could see all these luxury, cars outside this mansion at all hours of the night. And so it's easy to see this is something very interesting happening. They watch it for a while in 2020. This is during the pandemic. And remember, as I've written, government casinos, especially in BC, the epicenter of North American Chinese money laundering, are shut down. It's the pandemic. And so all this underground Chinese money laundering, fentanyl money laundering, human trafficking, this type of activity that needs to be, those funds don't stop. The crime doesn't stop. They need to be laundered in these underground massive casinos and in Ontario, right? And so York Regional Police, they find out there's a network operating in their area, and so they crack down. They raid the place, and that's why they're inside. Why are there 80 of them? Because their intelligence apparently, and as I know, is indicating that they're heavily armed inside. And as whether I wrote it in the story or not, I'm told that there's believed to be connectivity to what we call the company, which is the bosses of the biggest triads in the world, centered in southern China, Macau, and Hong Kong, working, as I report, and now as the U.S. government, is basically saying, working with Chinese Communist Party agents. So the company is interrelated in some way to this massive casino mansion. So we've got a Canadian police force, tactical, I would say the fear factor of raiding that place was very high because they know the power of the people involved and inside. That's what takes them inside, just on the crime side. I don't believe that York Regional Police, have much of an idea how politically sensitive it is when they're, in their operations. They're just busting the place, but then they find things that trigger the need to go to CSIS.
And to be clear, when these police officers go inside, they're wearing body armor because obviously they're worried about who's inside and the weapons, but they're also concealing their identities because who they're investigating and what they're busting is so high profile that Canadian police officers are concerned about retaliation. Is that correct?
This is what I know, and what anyone can take from the images. This is why I say this would look more suitable in Sinaloa state or in Naples, where the Camorra, or where the Italian mafia forces their local police forces to wear these body armor and face masks because they don't want their identities revealed, because organized crime in those areas has become so intertwined with the government and so powerful that it's a big concern, right? It's a safety concern. So to put that in context for our, your Canadian and American listeners and viewers, the company that is the highest level at this point, the most powerful criminal organization in the world, are triads connected to the Chinese Communist Party. I have people in the United States, intelligence of the world, saying the Chinese Communist Party itself is the most powerful and biggest illicit network in the world. So Markham, Ontario, Canada, for some reason, has become the outside China global center of Chinese transnational crime power.
Wow. That's just, it's
this
please.
is why some 80 police officers, heavily armed, heavily body armored, need to be there to go into this facility. We're not talking about, an underground poker game with a couple of bikers and this and that, right? They know that they're dealing with, and they've said even I believe beforehand they felt officers were intimidated just in their investigation steps preparing to approach that facility.
That is so insane. And what I was thinking of is police officers in Brazil, when they go into the favelas, they have to conceal their identities because the drug gangs, if they find out who they are, they will go after their entire families, right? And so it's just baffling how this is happening in Canada. I mean, a first world, second tier first world country, right? It's just it's mind boggling. Okay, so let's take it the next step. They go inside. We know that they found the videotapes. Can you just briefly cover what else they found, and also who was behind the underground casino, in terms of the like the exact figures who were running it?
Yeah. Yeah. So they find, on the standards crime side, they literally, the York Regional Police, in announcing their bust, they say the money flowing through these types of underground facilities uh, produces tremendous profits to fund other crimes, including drug trafficking and prostitution, for the criminals that have interests in these underground facilities. So going through this 20,000 square foot marble floored mansion, they find spa facilities, they find just like commercial gaming facility. They find the amount of liquor that you would find in a government facility, kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
For people that don't know, motai is like the high end vintage liquor that wealthy Chinese people can bid on for auction. So this has $1.5 million worth of that liquor, and this is the type of party favor that would appeal to the ultra rich of organized crime in Canada. And I'm told, of course, officials visiting from China. And when we talk about officials, we're talking about security officials, Chinese Communist Party officials, politicians. One piece of the warrant, to jump ahead here, that CSIS focused on was one of the people arrested out of 18 main figures arrested by York police that night was the relative of a high-ranking People's Liberation Army intelligence official. So that starts to reveal, the security and intelligence China side allegedly or suspected that's involved in that operation. If we're still talking about what they, on the crime side, they're rolling out, luxury baccarat tables. There's indications that cryptocurrency is used to facilitate, international betting there. It's a $20,000 per hand limit. So this is a high-end operation, right? You could go down to Las Vegas and bet $100,000 a hand, or maybe you used to be able to do it in BC before I exposed that operation. But an underground facility where you can put 20,000 for one hand. Beyond that, they're serving, of course, contraband, shark fin soup. And I mean, it's a good point to say, again, this is what one of my police sources would call the indication of a forward operational hub of Chinese organized crime in another country, and a forward operational hub of Chinese intelligence with organized crime. Because for the readers of my book, Willful Blindness, they'll probably recognize a chapter about a man named Lai Changxing, whose surprise was he ran to Canada, but he was a major organized crime and real estate developer figure in southern China that was involved in something called his Red Palace in Xiamen, Fujian province. Fujian, always very important in understanding what's going on in the world of crime and Canada. But Lai Changxing had this very, what I'm calling reminiscent of what's found in Markham, multi-room mansion where officials attend to eat shark fin soup, to drink motai, to gamble, to get involved in relationships with young women. And Lai Changxing and the Chinese security services are taping those activities inside, right? So it's an organized crime operation. It's an intelligence operation to get compromat on everyone in China. If they're not involved with the party, or if they are, that kind of information will be useful for the party, right? So Lai Changxing, very important figure. And I'm told he had a similar facility in Richmond, British Columbia, which you're very familiar from your neck of the woods.
It's my hometown, yeah.
He was running a little red palace in Richmond, BC for years. I was really interested when I read a case about this, and a Canadian lawyer says, we believe some similar activities to his red palace may have continued in Richmond, BC, right? So now I'm connecting the dot between, it's not new what's happening in Markham, Ontario. It's just huge. massive. I'm saying, as we unpack it, it will tie into fundraising of political parties. It'll tie into election interference. But hey, this is a thing, as I'm told. These underground palaces are a thing for Chinese organized crime, probably around the world, certainly in Canada, and the connections to foreign actor interference are a thing. Just the high end wealth inside will blow people's minds.
Yeah. So just to comment on the Richmond thing, because I know that there were many of them that were operational in Richmond. I have friends who are in the gray area as it pertains to the law, as most people in BC do. And it was just widely known exactly who was doing what. And in my adult years, and I say adult years, I talk 35. That's 35 and over for me. I was a child for a long time. Um, One night I go for a run. I do a 5 mile run every other day, and I live down by the dike, which is kind of, for people who don't know, it's kind of like it's the barrier between us and the ocean, and there's a path along it. And there was a giant mansion down at the bottom of the road from where I lived. Go for a run one night, and I'm not joking. There were probably 40 police vehicles there, people handcuffed on the sidewalk, all of them young Chinese men. And next day I read in the newspaper that, yeah, it was another underground casino. They pulled automatic weapons and all sorts of things out of there. This is 5 houses down from where I lived. And I didn't live in a mansion. I lived in a 1970s style duplex. But that, just to put things in perspective, like, that's how close this is to all of us, right? It's very close.
Absolutely. In that area of Richmond, I can picture it visually. You've got the municipality, and then as you get towards the ocean, you got those lawn, almost country roads,
Yeah.
and year by year, major mansions start to pop up. And Lai Changxing, the biggest organized crime figure in the world at the time, the biggest Chinese intelligence operator in a way at the time, he sets up one of these mansions right beside the ocean at the end of one of those country roads where these compounds are. And so there's the mansion here, and then they've built up, like a kind of like a luxury garage, and that's where people can tap into a computer that's wired into Macau, and they can be gambling in Macau, and then they can have a young woman come to their little gambling cubicle there. That's what's going on, right? The money flowing through. And as you know, I've told you, as a young reporter in Vancouver, I very quickly figured out how important real estate development is to municipal politics. And so to call our audience back, I was told this raid of the Markham mansion, people with awareness say it was stunning to find all the development documents and all the pictures of the politicians from high to low in Canada, but councillors in areas where these people or person want to develop. So for people familiar with development, it's always a hot issue in the Vancouver area, and sometimes people suspect that it's not all on the up and up. I'm saying that a live question, I'm afraid, should be, are local politicians getting invited to entertainment facilities where people involved in major land development in Vancouver could be seeking to corrupt them? And I think that's part of the story. This is not just about relationships with attractive young servers bringing you shark fin braised, whole shark fin soup.
Yeah, and that's where I was going next. So can you talk about those real estate development documents? Do we know what was on them? Do we know what they were relating to? I'm assuming those documents exist in that location, the palace, because the people who are running the operation there are doing deals with municipal government to get these real estate deals passed. And I'm assuming that this is part of the blackmail activity that's going on there. So do we know what was on those documents, where they were relating to, and
Um,
so forth?
in this particular mansion, I don't have details on the exactly where these documents, would have been related to. I'm just told these are major, indicative of major land deals in the greater Toronto area
Hmm.
that would, of course, have to go through municipal councils and other areas. So I can gather from diaspora sources, from law enforcement sources, that the concern around real estate development, it should be a concern that people not only with ties to the underground and organized crime, but the suspicion is with ties to the United Front Work Department and with ties to Chinese intelligence, could be seeking, corrupt relationships in real estate development. And as I've said, they're tycoon real estate developers are seen in China's system as so-called white gloves to engage in relationships with politicians, whether they be in Papua New Guinea or Fiji or Canada.
Yeah. So okay, so we have real estate development documents, of course, just a small armory of weapons found, cash, right? We have, of course, the videotapes that where we don't know exactly what's on them, but I guess we can. It's safe to assume some of what is must be on these tapes. Um, now, just really quickly, I want to ask. Why does CSIS have to jump through bureaucratic hoops in order to get the warrants that they need in order to conduct their intelligence investigation?
Yeah, this is something that's come up in our Foreign Interference Commission. Canada has, very strict laws around, what is in the police's jurisdiction is criminal investigations. What is in CSIS area is national security. Both have, strict rules around doing things like wiretaps or, getting evidence in warranted searches. And so for intelligence to cross over the border to police is near impossible for various reasons, and vice versa. For police to provide, evidence from criminal investigations to Canada's intelligence arms are very hard. So CSIS would have to write up a legal warrant saying they have reason to believe these activities. And so this is a big part of the story. I was informed CSIS's warrant says the primary suspect in this mansion casino is part of something called an Anhui province, that's in China, friendship association, which has direct linkages, according to information, to China's United Front Work Department, which is a foreign influence arm. So this, evidently would give CSIS some basis to believe this man is tied to a foreign influence arm through an association in Toronto. So that should give, some cause for the judge to think, well, maybe they should look at this video evidence. Also, this mansion owner is tied through his companies, construction and otherwise, in Anhui province, that you can literally go online. We're not going to say, a bunch of names here or get into the weeds. If you can do kind of Chinese character searches, you go to these companies and they literally have, they advertise their ties to the Chinese Communist Party. So this is part of the warrant. As I've said, one of the people arrested, allegedly a relative of a high level Chinese intelligence official, which you would think should raise some concern. Beyond that, allegedly, the mansion owner has a relationship with a real estate developer and community leader in Vancouver, Richmond area, your neck of the woods, former neck of the woods again, right?
Yeah.
This person in Vancouver, allegedly under investigation by CSIS, allegedly connected to the Vancouver consulate, allegedly the leader of a big United Front Work Department group, the type of person that can meet Xi Jinping, or go get face glorious recognition at some of these meetings in Beijing. And so this is enough, CSIS believes, that they should be able to obtain the evidence. And yet they apply for the warrant. And I'm told by a senior intelligence source that warrant is just gathering dust. Once it's sent from Toronto to CSIS headquarters, it's shelved for about 2 months. And there's all kinds of issues that could be related to that, whether it be, simply CSIS lacks a number of people in their legal department to tackle, in a timely way, what should be or could be an important breakthrough investigation, or there's issues around other areas of bureaucracy. People have to kind of triage what they think should be important. That's that. At the end of the day, all that matters is the case bizarrely falls apart with the Crown withdrawing criminal charges against the primary suspect. That person gets their video content back, and CSIS has lost the opportunity to put this in front of a judge.
It's maddening. It's maddening to hear this, because I just don't. I mean, this is why nobody takes Canada seriously anymore, right? We're not a serious country. It's insane how this happens, and it just continues. So can we talk about who was the person who owned the mansion, their level of involvement, and then let's talk about why this case fell apart. And maybe if you can go into detail there. I know we've already covered it at points, but I want to talk about exactly why this case fell apart, and maybe even also the ties. You know what? Let's backtrack. I want to talk about who owned the mansion and the implications, or the I don't know the word that I'm looking for here. The alleged donor relationship donor network with the Liberal Party and any other Canadian political parties if they're implicated.
Yeah, I've got my pen and paper here just so I'm completely accurate for any lawfare lawyers that are out here, watching. And okay, first of all, the person's name. He's from Anhui province. Reportedly came to Canada, around 2011, 2010. Vancouver first, ends up as a big real estate developer in Toronto. His name is Wei, first name Wei, last name Wei. At the time of the raid in July 2020, he's 52 years old. And as we've said, owns a lot of land in Toronto, is involved in a lot of development, knows a lot of politicians. So the criminal charges are against this person. But what takes this story into my investigative land, where I have all the knowledge of connections and fundraising, is, again, part of the warrant, this legal document that CSIS officers wanted to execute to get those videotapes, says he's a director of this Anhui Friendship Society, or its association. So I'm going to timeline it in live time here. This is started in 2012. He's a director. I go into the documents. Not only is he a director, but a person who's a high-level Liberal Party riding association executive in Markham is a director. Bing, red alarm there, right? Okay. We won't say the second person's name. We won't get into all the weeds, but the first person, Wei, alleged criminal, director of an Anhui United Front Friendship Association in Toronto. Another director, the Liberal Party executive. Another director, a former Ontario Liberal candidate who's very close to Justin Trudeau and Dalton McGuinty's sort of power circle, of Ontario Liberal and federal Liberal politics. Another director, I'm going down the list. No, let's stick with those three for right now. This leads to I tied those three directors to major fundraising for Justin Trudeau's Liberals. And let's just focus on the Anhui Friendship Association. In 2015, I can find through the Markham Liberal minister at the time, his name is John McCallum. He has a Team Trudeau fundraiser in Markham. And a number of these people associated to the casino mansion suspect are at that fundraiser. This includes the person that's a director on the Anhui Friendship Association and is a Liberal Party official, is a co-chair of this John McCallum fundraiser, which is headlined by none other than former Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair, a star candidate in the Toronto area. So what do we have here? Just focusing on the Anhui Friendship Association, which is tied to the illegal casino in a CSIS warrant. We have also a Liberal Party official, John McCallum, Bill Blair, having a major fundraising event for Election 42 and Team Trudeau, right? So on the face of it, you can tie this friendship association that already has ties to China openly, you can tie it to an illegal casino investigation. And so you have to ask the question, who are the people at the fundraiser? Who are the people that are co-chairs of this campaign fundraiser? And what kind of money is being rushed into Justin Trudeau's coffers at that event? Now, there are other people, to get into the weeds, at that this is like a 4,000 word story, but there's a key fundraiser for Justin Trudeau who is not nominally, a director on this Anhui Friendship Association, but is involved in all kinds of similar meetings with all kinds of similar people, Liberal officials and Chinese real estate developing tycoons. And he's a co-chair at this August 2015 McCallum, Bill Blair, Team Trudeau fundraiser. And so again, it raises big concerns. When I look at the pictures of who's at that meeting, these are people that are involved directly in CSIS's election interference investigation, politicians, Liberal Party staff, and people that I can associate to now this illegal casino mansion. So I think that says it all. But when you've got people with connections to China, allegedly connections to organized crime, and connections at the highest levels to Liberal Party officials and fundraising, it starts to tell you what kind of money could be flowing into this election interference slush fund fools, or whatever you want to call them.
That might be the most frightening thing you've told me in all of the discussions that we've had so far. Because what it implies, right, is that CCP backed organized crime money is flowing directly into the coffers of the Liberal Party and potentially other political parties in Canada, correct?
We can say concretely that this Anhui Friendship Association is subject of a CSIS warrant because, for one, a man not only suspected of being an underground casino operator, but suspected of being involved in Chinese intelligence is part of it. Not only is he part of it, but a high level Liberal Party riding associate executive is part of it. Other people targeted by CSIS are, at the fundraising event with these people, and they're drawing in money. So yeah, what is that money? We don't see the picture of a direct line to a bundle of cash at a casino, but we see people with corporate ties to that casino that are involved. We see other people that turn up at fundraisers after Justin Trudeau is elected, again, that have on the face of it and proven direct ties to the Chinese state. And so to step back and draw the picture, again, my sources inform me that in 2013, the Chinese Communist Party starts to develop this plan to cultivate Mr. Trudeau through these, what China calls white gloves. These are wealthy business persons used around the world, apparently very much so in Canada, as proxies for the Chinese state. It would look bad if the Chinese state gave $1 million to Justin Trudeau. So they task wealthy business persons who some may not be, with direct organized crime connections. I'm saying some of the people in this story allegedly do. So yeah, it is shocking and scary. And people have been asking, sort of kind of, where's the beef with regards to, this money that China allegedly filtered into the election in 2019? How did it what was the method? Show us, did that go into campaigns? Did it go into other areas? And I'm saying, hey, we don't have to. That this is reported. This is what Justice Hogue has confirmed is accurate, that the CSIS sources say this happened and the intelligence says it did. We can go back before Of course, we should go back before the 2019 election and look at who funded, who built up Justin Trudeau through fundraising. And I'm saying we only have to look at that one fundraiser to find a number of people of concern. And, you know, another thing, I think, let's go into this weed. It's a question in the second phase of the commission. Did Bill Blair, as public safety minister, sit on a warrant targeting a politically connected Canadian? And I'm, for legal reasons, I'm not going to name all the names I could right now, but this very person who Bill Blair will be examined, did he sit on a warrant targeting this person, you know, in 2021 or not? You know, did he impede an investigation that could have proceeded quickly, or did it drag out, you know, or not? This person, this politically connected Canadian, is at that August 2015 fundraiser with John McCallum, with Bill Blair, with the official who can be tied to the association with corporate links to the illegal casino. And I'll end my answer here. I've already reported, you know, we referred to my narrative about how I got introduced to some of these documents and sources in the summer of 2022. Well, one of the documents that I read said the only politician's name I've read in a document, it said John McCallum may have been pushed to hold press conferences in January 2019 to argue the view that the detention of Mun Wanzhou is illegal. Okay, so why am I reading that John McCallum may have been pushed to take this action, which we can the inescapable inference is the action was for Beijing? Look, the people that were at this August 2015 fundraiser with him are tied to the Chinese state. So who could be pushing him?
Right.
My diaspora source information indicates the very person who was at that August 2015 meeting probably was involved in this scandalous McCallum Free Mun Wanzhou press conference, as I call it.
My God. Okay, so I guess the next thing I want to ask you is how does CSIS write up this warrant, and how does it just sit there collecting dust, considering the significance of what appears to be happening in this palace, right? This appears to be an operation, perhaps the nucleus of our political political interference story, right? It seems to be like this is where it is all happening. So who is responsible for signing off on that warrant, and why don't they?
So on this one, I can only share the information I have from people with strong knowledge, and their explanation is CSIS is under-resourced. I've already reported on, you know, this is a fact. While China's threat went up, CSIS's funding on counter-espionage and interference went down. So that's a problem. Resources, the old Canadian strict legal rules, intelligence to evidence, is a big picture problem. That warrant, which my sources believe could be a breakthrough to get into what I think you correctly call the nucleus of the Chinese election interference network, with potential connections to organized crime, it sits for, as I've said, 8 weeks. And so that could be, what I've talked about, a decision up in CSIS about triaging, what's important. Something is simply at the back of the line. And people in CSIS, I was told, saw this as, this is a crime thing. We do national security. It's the RCMP's job to look at casinos. It's not our job, right? And so now I'll jump into, a source that I can't name. I quote in the story saying, Canada's national security apparatus is broken and ineffective. The leaders don't know what they're doing. And there's a shocking lack of accountability around politically connected Canadians, right? And so there's two things there. Is this the case that people were afraid that, jumping on this warrant might get into areas that the type of stuff that would make them scrub the name of a politically connected Canadian from, an intelligence report? Or were people that, could be connected to not just Justin Trudeau, maybe other political leaders that'll a can of worms they don't want? I don't know. But what I am told is that for decades, the leaders of intelligence, or the ones that survived politically, have just turned a blind eye to the fact, they've been willfully blind to the fact that China and Iran, especially in Canada, use organized crime as proxies as a primary tool. And so if you're willfully blind or just plain stupid, and you're looking at this is crime, we're intelligence, we're academic, maybe we don't deal with crime, and you ignore that stuff, you're bound to fail from the start. So, I mean, I'm told there's arrogance, naivety, hubris. Is it worse? Is it a form that of like not wanting to deal with sensitive cases? I don't know, but I suspect that could be part of it too.
So I guess the last question, I mean, I have so many questions. We could talk about this for like 5 hours because there's so many things here that I don't understand. And I don't understand because I'm trying to have the most optimistic perspective possible. Right. Yeah. And I do understand if I'm actually using critical thinking and considering what we're looking at here. And so I guess final question is how does this case fall apart? And also, how does Weiwei, the man so nice they named him twice, how does he end up with these videotapes back in his possession? I mean, look, and I'm not going to go on a long diatribe here, but if this were the United States, if the NYPD walked in on an underground casino and gathered tapes of prominent political figures engaged in a myriad of criminal activity, right? Those tapes may go to the FBI. Those tapes may go to the CIA. I would estimate probably both. We may not hear anything about it in the public, but there is absolutely no way those tapes go back to the original source. So how does Weiwei end up with these tapes again, and how does the entire case fall apart?
So for this part, I'm only relying on the information of a single senior intelligence source. So let's have that caveat here. This is not a document I've read. It's one source. But I understand that Weiwei has a very, prominent law firm that's good at, and we don't need to get into that right here, but is good at lawyering. And he had some very good lawyering. And again, I've reached out to the lawyer and haven't heard back. But I understand that, when the scandal goes public, that suggests, we don't know if it's true or not, it suggests that someone in the York Regional Police during a search pocketed, almost $500,000 worth of luxury watches, however they were acquired or with legal or not, that's not a part of the story. But so yeah, it appears that the Crown sees that I can't speak for the Crown. I think it's if from my distance, it looks like a weak-kneed bad decision. They drop crime charges against like almost everyone on the casino side, if not everyone. They get what they say is one very important person on a weapons charge, but all the casino crime charges, especially against Weiwei, go away. And I'm told from one source with awareness that, part of the deal that was cut was he gets his video content back. And CSIS, I'm told, found it interesting that within the space of 2 weeks, he flies to a Caribbean island. Again, I've not seen his flight log. I've not seen a document, but I think it's an interesting, since we have a very knowledgeable audience in these discussions, something called third-party countries are used by nations like China, where if you wanted to do like a handoff or something like that, if a corrupt politician wanted to do a bag pass or like do something major, they might go to Cambodia, which is seen as a Chinese organized crime controlled state. Right? So they go to a country like Cambodia, maybe a bunch of them go to a country like Cambodia, or in this case, maybe they go to a Caribbean island and some sort of, destruction or pass off occurs. So that answers your question of what happens to the evidence and why. Good lawyering, bad lawyering on the part of CSIS or whatever, bad, who knows? I'll just leave it at that. Good lawyering for a person that can afford good lawyers, and then poof, an important case for Canadian intelligence gone.
And also important to note here is, recently, in the United States, Diddy, of all people, Puff Daddy, is caught in the middle of another sexual exploitation, potential sexual blackmail case. And when his doors were being kicked in, his private plane left without him on it and landed somewhere in the Caribbean.
Did it? There you go. We got a pattern.
Right. So okay. So I just want to say this because I'm an outside observer. I'm not Sam Cooper. I don't have, well, I do have integrity, but not the type of integrity that Sam has to uphold. So as an outside observer, what this looks like to me is that there are people within our intelligence community, there are people within law enforcement, there are people within our political structure who are all protecting these people. And it seems to me like the fear is that we're the public to ever find out what's actually happening, that the legitimacy of our democracy would come into question. And I think that's what's happening here. I think these people are being intentionally protected because how do so many follies occur all along the same timeline, right? Like, am I right for thinking what I think, Sam?
I think that's a good critical thinking, only because, you're right. For me to report something, I can't speculate, and I can't, give rise to conspiracy theories, but I can tell you the path you're thinking along is being pursued by people in Canadian intelligence, not pursued, by smart people in law enforcement and Canadian intelligence are thinking. It is very strange the way these watches disappeared, or did they disappear, right? It's a strange occurrence. And could it be more than just, let's say it's a greedy cop or a little corruption problem, right? Or could it be something more strategic? Okay, I don't know, but I'm saying it's not even me speculating. It's not even you as a smart reader speculating. People involved, I believe, are investigating that. And I don't know what they've considered, but they had those same thoughts as, just your average smart critical thinker.
And look, you're running an illegal underground casino. What proof do you have that $450,000 in watches were there in the first place? It's not like your illegal casino is insured.
Well, on that
right?
point, I mean, that we should say there's a video where these watches, whether he had legal chain of ownership, I strongly doubt or not, but two high-end watches are seen on the video near the start of the raid, I believe. And then hours and hours later, they're not there. Someone notices they're not there, whether it's, a lawyer reviewing the tape through disclosure, right? How would the lawyer know to watch 20 hours of tape and then go, oh,
those watches,
two things in the corner of the room were there and now they're not.
That's right?
That's a very sharp-eyed lawyer with a lot of time on their hands. These are, I'm not just making this up. These are people that have been thinking through these things. It's interesting how this happened and how people noticed it happen. So that's that.
But how did, I mean, I don't know. The whole time we're having this discussion, I know you got to run, so we'll wrap this in a couple minutes. But the whole time we're having this discussion, I'm thinking to myself, there's all this red tape to get to baseline, right? And I think people listening to this will think the same thing I'm thinking. Well, why not just give CSIS the ability to conduct the investigation? But I have to remind people here, it is very important that our intelligence communities and our law enforcement communities are kept separate and there be a dividing line between them. Because in the United States, after World War II, the CIA becomes very, very, very active in manipulating and controlling American media, in manipulating American events, right? Who assassinated JFK, I think, There are some questions as to who was involved there. We have programs that we know about, like MK Ultra. We have CIA programs that we are now aware of, where they were operating within the United States and when they weren't supposed to be. And that's what happens when you give these agencies too much power. So although it's frustrating because there is a ton of red tape and we can't just have Canadian intelligence go in and figure out what's going on, these breakages do exist for a reason, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, part of the story here, from when I'm writing these stories, it's not just to be interesting. It's that there's a public interest. There's legal things that people might not want to focus on all day, but I'm told that, one, Australia has told Canada they recognize that China uses transnational organized crime to facilitate intelligence operations targeting the highest level Australian politicians. So this is important. Two, Australia's federal police and ACO, its security organization, they have boundaries, but they have mechanisms to work together very well. They have mechanisms to work with US law enforcement, etc. And so you're right. You in a good Western world, you don't need a secret police running everything. That's what they have in China, right? So we need those boundaries. And I'm not a huge expert of the history of the CIA, but there's no doubt they got up to interesting things in interesting places. And so we don't want intelligence agencies that work with organized crime or use the sources, just scandalously, right?
Right.
We want these rules, but we want structures, and this is what needs to come out of the Hogue Commission, the Foreign Interference Commission. We need boundaries, but we need mechanisms so that intelligence and police recognize other states are not obeying any rules. They're operating on our soil in dangerous and violent ways. And so we need the mechanisms that can quickly respond, RCMP and CSIS. And where we are right now is like 1940s, right?
Yeah.
We need an accelerator to get up to the speed of how our adversaries are operating on our soil.
And we just need to know why this warrant sits at CSIS for however many months, just collecting dust. Why was it never signed off on? Why, you know what I mean? Like, that's the big question to me. Through this whole story, the one thing that really grabs me is why that warrant just sits there collecting dust, and there's a reason for it, right?
Well, again, in the Foreign Interference Commission, we will have Bill Blair, who put his hand on a Bible and said, the Globe and Mail's report that I sat on a warrant involving a politically connected Canadian who's a big fundraiser for my party. I, Bill Blair, sat on it for 4 months. He said the Globe and Mail report is false. Okay, look, although I didn't report this at Global News, I had the information that Bill Blair sat on the warrant for 4 months before they did, right? And the information was solidly sourced. I'll say that right now. It's not even a scoop. People recognize by now what I reported is accurate. Globe's reporting has been accurate. So who's right, Bill Blair or the people that have just been proven right through all the firestorms? Did he sit on that for 4 months because a person who's at this August 2015 fundraiser, which ties in to the illegal casino network, I'm saying, could that be related? We'll see. Could this other warrant, 2 months gathering dust, is it more than just, bureaucratic? Is there something more about, is it political? I have nothing to indicate that. And my sources don't even indicate that. But I think as a critical thinker, you're asking the right question, because it crossed my mind too.
Yeah, and I guess I have two closing comments. First, putting your hand on a Bible means nothing if you don't believe what's in it. And number two, could it be that somebody like Bill Blair ends up where he is now as a reward for helping people out of a jam?
Bill Blair, I've never had any, let me put it this way. I've heard allegations about certain politicians that appear to be well-founded. I've never heard anything about Bill Blair, but what I have heard, again, I have heard that he sat on a warrant allegedly for 4 months, and the United States intelligence community was very aware of the need for the warrant. And allegedly, someone mentioned that fundraising from a person targeted in a warrant is important. That's all I've heard about Bill Blair. And it seems like he strongly denies it. So, I've never had the chance to ask him, but there it is. He says one thing, another set of facts presents itself. Will they get to the bottom of it? This is my most interesting, one of that is what has been covered by the Hogue Commission. To me, that's the most interesting live question. But in my mind, I've just introduced evidence in this casino story that they haven't covered it all and they need to cover.
Sam, you just dropped a nuclear bomb, right? Because it's impossible to ignore at this point. Even if they don't cover it in the inquiry, we all know, right? And it's become increasingly evident through your work and the work of a few others that all of this is interwoven together somehow, and that we have ended up in the situation with policy that we're seeing passing through Parliament with with outside interests involved, right? And this is so much bigger than just. And sorry, Mrs. Cooper, before I say this, but this is so much bigger than just some MP getting a blowjob in the back room while he plays backgammon. You know what I mean? This is our political future. This is the future of our country that's being, for lack of a better word, gambled in this illegal casino, right? And
yeah, I mean, didn't mean to cut you off, but one of the best lines in the interim report was Commissioner Hogue, although I believe she fell very short of recognizing the scale and the depth of the problem, she said, it is a very real concern that our politicians will start to change their messages and their positions based on foreign interference. I think she said it's going to get worse. And I think she was being a little bit diplomatic because I think she knows it has already happened. And that speaks to what you said about bills being either not raised because they would bother China, or going through in a massaged way that helps China, or Huawei's decision being sat on for 3 years until someone in Washington says, okay, time up, right?
Right. And Sam, I don't want to get conspiratorial on you, and I know you have to go, so I'll cap it here. But in Australia, their digital identification system, their proposed digital identification system, just passed the first reading, right? And this digital identification system is modeled very closely to what is already operational in China, right? So that should be evidence to people listening that these. Although it seems silly that these underground casinos and these fundraisers and these people donating to our politicians has an everlasting permanent effect on the way that you exist and your freedom.
Well, the thing you raise, it's like we don't even have to say that the federal government in another country has chosen a policy because of influence. We could say, just based on the people I'm talking about in Markham, one of the people connected to it runs a grocery store that tried to institute facial recognition technology, right? We just have a story that I wrote about a Toronto banker who I won't name. And the concerns appear to be that through a Canadian banking operation granted after a meeting, with our prime minister, and the questions are, can they be connected? Could that have access to the financial information and the IDs of other people? So whether, to take your point, yeah, I don't entertain conspiracy theories, but it's not a theory to say that China wants to have visibility on every Canadian, not just the diasporas. They want access to, health records for various reasons, that can tie into their military, activities. And so, yeah, I mean, decisions that regard how your government has access to your material, they do involve foreign states at some level. And if your state becomes a South Pacific island, then it's not a conspiracy to say that a law can go through that it advantages at the highest level China's visibility on your life And so we should be starting to think in our states, about those concerns.
Yeah, and little factoid here. I don't know if you know, but I think it was 23andMe sold their entire DNA library to China recently. So
There you go.
if you're doing 23andMe, China has your DNA. Sam, brother, man, another great one. And thank you. You pulled me through this because I ate some bad steak tacos last night and took a minute to shake out the cobwebs. Sam, let's do this again in a few weeks. I honestly believe that what you're onto is bigger than even you know.
Yeah, like I got to put some boxes around where I go, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're seeing in the world right now has the same group of people at the end of it, and I think you're right on top of these people, and I think it's a matter of months or a matter of years or even months before you connect a serious dot that I don't think will ever be able to be unconnected. And it's an honor for me to host you, man. Sam, before we leave and hang around for 10 seconds as always, but before we go, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, just go to the bureau.news, and that's the main platform, as we always say. You can read, talking about this casino story, and I need to be very careful, but I've been very careful in writing it. So everything we've talked about, all the dots are there. The pictures, I would add, people, if you look at the pictures, maybe, I know you didn't ask me this, but if you look at what I call my evidence of photo collage, you can find a Liberal Party association director connected to a fundraiser, connected to an anti-friendships association, standing beside an organized crime figure, standing beside a Chinese confirmed intelligence actor. And as they say, a picture might even tell stories better than I can. So go check it out, thebureau.news.
Yeah. For people interested in reading, it's the story is linked directly below this video. I recommend it. Sam, you blow my mind every time. And I'm one of those people, I don't just read the first paragraph and think I got the whole story. I read right to the end. And this is one of those ones, it's a long read, but it's so important because Sam completely breaks it all down. And he explains it in a way that is digestible, because this is a very complex, a very complicated situation. And Sam does a brilliant job in his reporting of breaking it down to the atoms so that you can understand them. Because I'm a dummy too. I'm a writer, but I'm not your type of writer. I'm an idiot in your world. So for people who are like me, it's amazing to read your reporting because you can actually grasp what's really happening. Sam didn't mention it, but I'll say follow Sam on X, Scooper Cooper. Sam is my favorite follow. I habitually refresh his feed.
Yeah.
Sometimes at night I smoke a joint and doom scroll through Sam's account just to
You'll get a 90s hip hop reference in a YouTube.
That's right. That's right. All right, Sam. Well, I'll let you go. Stick around for 10 seconds and we'll see what we can come up with for the next one. But for now, man, thank you so much, Sam. I can't praise you enough. I think you're the best. You're the greatest, like, period. And dude, thank you so much for having these discussions with me. And dude, I love it. I'm just very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And just so you all know, Sam ain't strapped, but the people around him are. So
that's true. True.